types of radical feminist perspective on Marxism. Radical feminism. There are many varieties of radical feminism. However, Valerie Bryson argues that they share at least one. They share at least one characteristics in common. According to her, all they share at least one characteristics in common. However, Valerie Bryson argues that they share at least one characteristics in common. According to her, all radical feminists sees operation. Capitalism, personal life and capitalism. Many varieties of radical feminists, however, Valerie Bryson again to argue that they share at least one characteristic in common. According to her, all radical feminism sees the oppression of women the most fundamental and universal form of domination. There are many varieties of radical feminists, however, Valerie Bryson argues that they share at least one characteristic in common. According to her, all radical feminists sees oppression being the most fundamental and universal form of domination. Society seen as patriarchal or male dominated, rather than capitalist, and women are held to have different interests from those of men. Women are held to have different interests from those of men. There are many varieties of radical fundamental. Society is seen as patriarchal or male dominated rather than capitalist. Society is and men are held to have different interests from those of men. Held to have different interests from those of men. Christian do not agree on the source of the male domination, but most do see the family as important in maintaining male power. Christian Delphi and Diana Leonard, family exploitation. So Christian Delphi and Diana, family exploitation. So Christian Delphi and Diana Leonard are unlike the most radical feminists in that they Christian Delphi and Diana Leonard are unlike the most radical feminists in that they attach considerable importance to material factors. Unlike the most radical feminists in that they attach considerable importance to material factors. Christian Delphi, Diana Leonard. Christian Delphi, Diana Leonard attach considerable importance to material factors in causing women's oppression. In this respect, their views have some similarity with Marxist feminism. In that they attach considerable importance to material factors in causing oppression. Attach considerable importance to material factors and exploitation of the oppression of women. In this respect, their views have similarity. Marxist feminist theories. Delphi and Leonard attach special importance to work, and they say that the approach uses Marxist methodology. Because they see themselves as nevertheless they see themselves as radical feminist since they believe that it's men rather than capitalist. Okay. It's men rather than capitalists who are primary beneficiaries of exploitation. Beneficiaries of exploitation. Primary benefits of the exploitation of women's labor. Family is an economic system. Delphi will not see the family as an economic system. Okay. Christian Delphi and Lenon. Christian Delphi and Lenon. I believe that it's men rather than the capitalism of the capitalists who are the primary beneficiaries and exploitations of the women's labor. The family and the economic system. Delphi will not see the family as an economic system. So family. Okay. Understood this one. Delphi and the Delphi and not see family as an economic system. It involves particular set of labor relations, in which men benefit from and exploit the work of the women. Men benefit. So definitely family is an economic system in which men benefit from the work of labor of the women and exploit the work of women and sometimes that of their children and those male relatives. Delphi and see the family's economic system involves a particular set of labor in which men benefit from and exploit the work of the women and sometimes that their children and male relatives. The key to exploitation is that family members work not for themselves but for the head of the household. Family members not work for themselves. The key to exploitation is that family members work not for themselves but for the head of the households, leading to their work being appropriated within the family. Delphi and Lenon identified the following features as the main characteristics of the family and economic system. Delphi and Lenon identified the following features as the main characteristics of the family and economic system. Every family-based household has a social structure that involves two types of roles. Two types of roles. So every family-based household has a social structure. There involves two types of roles. These are head of household and their and a dependent or helper. her head of household. Family structure. So if the family structure, family के sort of has a social unit involves two types of roles. So every family household has a social structure that involves two types of roles. These are head of the household and the dependents, helpers. Female heads of the household are uncommon. Okay, so female heads uncommon. That was majority of men. The male head of the household is different from other members because the male head of the household is different from because he decides what there should be doing in the situation. And assign tasks to other members. Or delegates to them. Assign task and after the members or delegates to them.
I used to mistake these so-called quotes as motivational quotes and often asked myself, am I really working hard enough in my life? I also developed a very strange toxic relationship with the feeling of being overworked and burnt out. It was a very weird, paradoxical feeling. Feeling good about the fact that I was mentally burnt out because it meant that I had the proverbial fire in my belly that one supposedly needs in order to be successful. I almost never realized how this mentality was affecting my own confidence, self worth, and just my ability to say no to anything or anyone. It's still something that I struggle with even today, and I feel immensely guilty when I take that well deserved and much earned break from work. I'm sure a lot of you hearing this will relate to this feeling. But have you ever wondered why, instead of asking ourselves if we are working hard enough, we haven't asked ourselves, how is my nervous system feeling? I guess not, because hustle culture leaves no room for us to pause and ask ourselves this question. Welcome to the final episode of season 2 of Slow Down with Astha. My last but not the least guest is someone who tasted unreal success at a really young age. She seemed to have it all until one day she was faced with a very serious panic attack, which became her wake up call to take charge of her crumbling mental health. Today, she has left that world behind and dedicated herself to making mental health care more accessible and affordable in India through her very popular app, MindCures. In this conversation, she bears her heart and talks about her journey, her lessons, the struggles she deals with even today as a successful entrepreneur, and the need for us to stop glorifying hustle culture. Please join me in this deeply personal conversation with my guest, Kanika Agarwal. Hi Kanika, welcome to Slow Down with Astha.
Hi, glad to be here.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this and for being our final guest, because I really deeply respect the work that you're doing to make mental health care more accessible and affordable in India. But before we get into all of that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Sure, Astha. So, I think I've been in my professional career now for the last 11 years. I'm originally from Delhi, but I spent about 15 years in Singapore. I'd gone there for my studies, then my career started with Google, Microsoft. My first company, I became an entrepreneur at the age of, I think, 25. And the first company was in Singapore. And then I started MindPure, came back to India. MindPure started because of my own mental health journey, a lot of anxiety, panic attacks, just a trigger warning for people who go through anxiety. Yes, and now I'm building MindPures. I'm also an angel investor, love to mentor people. I love to travel. I have a partner who's absolutely opposite of me, which means that, he's more of an outdoor person, not a nerd at all, and he's basically the calm to my sea. And I am a dog person now, so I have a dog as well, and these are probably the two things which keep me sane. So yeah.
So, I mean, on the surface of it, great career. You've worked with like big companies, Google and Microsoft, and you set up your own company, and very successful career in the conventional sense of what people think of the word. What were the mental challenges that you had to put up with that people probably don't see, which is the only reason you could reach those kind of heights at such a young age?
I have learned it the hard way, but when I did all of this, okay, the only thing that ran in my mind was fake it till you make it, okay, and which was absolutely wrong. Because when you are especially when you're coming out of your corporate zone and you're building something, you operate out of the fear of failure. At least I do, right? And my fear of failure, Astha, was so high because I'm a golden child to my parents. I've always been a topper, and like they say that your childhood traumas actually give you the most problems in your adulthood. So for me, the mental health challenge, I think the biggest thing for me was my fear.
So this podcast is about mental health, the hustle culture that we all are following.
And because of that, when I was running my first company, it led to so much overthinking, overworking, all out of fears, that one fine night, again trigger warning, I woke up to breathlessness, to excruciating heart pain, and and when especially you don't know about mental health, the first thing that comes to your mind is that it could be a heart attack, but actually it was a panic attack, and I had to be hospitalized and all of those things. And that's where my series of journey of anxiety started from. So I was diagnosed with clinical anxiety, and it took me a lot of time to get over it. As of today, it has come back. So I also, as we talk, I want to tell you that my anxiety is back because the company is at a very crucial phase, and all those fears are back again. So, but to your question, like a lot of entrepreneurs and even employees, people who are in corporate jobs, I think we work with so much fear. and these sort of mental health challenges have become very common. So, that's what I also faced personally.
Thank you for sharing your personal journey with us. And, one is people have this misconception when it comes to the word anxiety, because I have so many friends who say things like, it's the same as nervousness. Everyone gets nervous. What's the big deal? But the physiological manifestation of an anxiety attack is, I've never personally dealt with anxiety. I have a friend who tells me about what it is like and how crippling it actually is when you're having a panic attack. I want to explore this entrepreneurial journey because we've normalized this so much in terms of the pressure. You cannot let anyone down. There are financial targets. And I don't know if any people know this, but before I started this podcast, I had a business of my own. And interesting fact is now, for instance, you dealt with anxiety. I dealt with depression. And there's an actual word for this called entrepreneurial depression, which comes with the loneliness that you feel and the constant expectations that you're pushing yourself to meet. In your case, what is that straw that broke your back where you said, I'm done, I'm not going to do this for my mental health anymore?
To be very honest, it keeps coming and going for me. If you want to understand from a fact, so firstly, because you started with the thing that there's a thin line in what anxiety is, or our understanding. A lot of types of stress and anxiety are good for us, right? Because it tells our brain that there is something important or there is something actually fearful. And if I may take a minute to delve into the science of this, because the problem is, Asta, that a lot of us don't know the science of how anxiety works, right? So the thing is that our brain has two parts, prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, right? Now, the amygdala is the oldest part of your brain. What amygdala is supposed to do is that whenever there is something fearful that is happening, so let's say if you see a tiger, what your brain is supposed to do is it is supposed to activate the amygdala, and it is going to tell your body that, look, it's a tiger, it is not good for you have to run for your life, right? But we humans are complex. So now for our brain, what has happened is, for us as humans, not meeting someone's expectations, the feeling of judgment, the feeling of failure, all of these things have become fear as well, right? So these are parts of a life happened through rational thinking, through decision making, which is done by your prefrontal cortex. Now what happens is, a human like me, a person like me, now if I know that, hey, I'm letting down, let's say, my team members, I'm letting down my investors, I'm letting parents, and if it becomes a constant way of fear for me, every time something wrong will happen, the amygdala will take over, right? It's not going to be the prefrontal cortex that will take over. And when it starts to happen even at places where the amygdala is not supposed to get activated, that is where you know that your stress, your anxiety that is happening is not good. Correct? So when it happens in series, that's how it happens, right? And for me, what has happened is, Asta, that I like to be very transparent. If I say that as a founder of a mental health company, am I absolutely slowing down? Am I keeping it absolutely sane? No, not at all. But I'm going to just give you an example that today, when I'm talking to you, I'm actually in Tokyo, and my 2-week holiday starts from tomorrow. And right now, I'm in immense burnout. I know how burnt out I am. And what I've told my team is that, look, guys, I'm on leave from 4th to 14th, and it's probably after 3.5 years of mind peers that I'm first time taking a holiday where I will not be checking my work emails. I've just told this to myself that I will not be touching work at all. Right? So I don't know that if I myself am able to practice it very regularly, and if I'm there, but I am taking conscious decisions to be able to take that time out.
I resonate with this because I'm at the end of my season and I know how exhausted I am, and I'm already thinking, no, in August I have to practice what I preach. I need to take that time out. I need to recuperate. But speaking about anxiety, I recently saw the film Inside Out 2, and it is such a beautiful film in terms of explaining how anxiety, which is good and kind of prepares you for all outcomes, just suddenly and slowly spirals into a wave of just irrational fears. And anyone who's listening to this episode, I would really sincerely request you, please watch the movie Inside Out 2. It portrays anxieties, both the aspects of anxiety in a very beautiful way. Now there's so many young people who will be facing this dilemma. I think also the modern world has become such where we just normalize this, push your boundaries and hustle and, go and get everything done and stuff. And yes, there's one side of it. I think sometimes it's a luxury to be able to quit. For instance, when I had my business, many people said, do take time off, man, it's okay. And I knew I had no choice but to rough that phase out. You're probably dealing with the same thing again, even if you want to back down, it's now or never, because this is when the momentum has picked up. How will you advise anyone who is a young person and is listening to this and thinking or debating, should I rough it out even if my mental health gets screwed, or should I just quit and find something that protects my mental well-being?
Got it. The answer to this question is always very difficult, because I'll tell you what happens, right? As an individual, it is such a difficult decision to take, always, alright? And I think my advice to any young person, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, I think entrepreneurs will be able to relate more with it, is that number one, I want to say, we all have our own journeys, okay? I have gone through the pressures, and I still do. That, when I'm swiping through my LinkedIn, I see, oh, this founder has done this founder has done so much, now I want to do this, that. And what I've realized is that the control of how much do you want the external things to impact you also lies on you. And as a result, the very first thing I want to tell to everyone is that it's your journey. Everyone's journey is very different. Someone might have raised their funds, within 2 months of starting their startup. There are really good sustainable startups who raised their funds after 5 years of running their startup. There are companies who are doing great even without funds, right? So everyone's journey is very different. And that is why accepting that, firstly, is very important. Second is that telling yourself that I'm not going to succumb to the pressures is very important, right? And I have started to practice that. Like, I'm very consciously practicing that, right? Because what I have realized is, I'm going to give this example. The days that when I'm down, the days when, my mental health is not great, I can see that my output is not great. When we go on flights, what do they say? They say that put on your mask first and then help the person or your child or whoever is beside you. So the point is that I made this mistake where I waited for the worst to happen with my anxiety, and I shouldn't have. If probably I wouldn't have waited so much and I would have done something about it preventively, I feel things could have been way better for me. So the point I'm trying to drive here is that knowing your boundary, knowing when to say no, not succumbing to pressure, all of these things are very important. And that can only happen when you have accepted that, look, this is going to be my journey and I'm going to live it and I'm going to enjoy it the way I want to. And nowadays, Asta, when you ask people that why do you want to become an entrepreneur, I mentor so many young entrepreneurs. The reason that I get is that they say, oh, it's so glam, it is so cool. It has almost become, the thing. Like earlier, the thing used to be if you were working in a big company like Google, or if you were part of one of the FANG, right? Now the cool thing is to be an entrepreneur. But I was just reading this very, just today morning, I read this post. It's by someone called Dilip. He's from Rain Matter. And he wrote this very nice post. He said that last year, 950 new startups opened, but 35,000 startups shut down. And he wrote that entrepreneurs are always running after the shiny things. Just because the other entrepreneur is doing it, I also want to do it. And he said that running a business is not about running after the shiny things, but the practical things, which is building for a customer and making sure that you have a business model which is profitable, which is sustainable. That's all what matters. So, and that is so true. So I feel it's your journey. Accept that, right? Run it according to how you feel comfortable. If there are days you want to just take it off, just take off on those days. When there are days that you really want to hustle on those days. But being comfortable inside with the journey that you are leading is very important. If the inner is not comfortable, whatever happens on the outside, it's not going to work out.
Yeah, there's two things I want to address here. I think you're right when there are these trends. It was cool to first have a job with like a Google or a Microsoft, and when the influencers came, everyone wanted to be an influencer. Now it's an entrepreneur.